So what is Jesus doing here? Well, a few little phrases in the text that we just heard perhaps can give to us a clue. And honestly, to confess, we might not really like what it is that Jesus is doing here. In this incident, we're told that Jesus left the synagogue, and then we're told the time, that evening after sunset. So what we know from those two little phrases is that Jesus is doing something after the synagogue worship, after sunset, thus on the Sabbath. Jesus is doing something on the Sabbath when people are not supposed to be doing anything. And I know in our busy, non-stop lives, that may not mean anything, but in that time and place, it meant that Jesus was breaking the rules in a major way. It meant that Jesus was not acting holy according to their conventions. Jesus was being unholy by what he was doing in regards to the law. Which is really strange, because the Gospel of Mark began and told us at the very beginning that Jesus was sent out on his mission by the Holy Spirit, whose voice cried out, "You are my beloved, my own. On you my favor rests." So what is Jesus doing here? Well, I want to use one of my paintings to help us imagine what Jesus is doing here. And you see the original here in the front, and I also have it projected up here so you can get a closer look at it. I've entitled this painting Creation, Recreation. And I want to focus on a particular area of the painting. Now, hopefully in this area you see a tree. And the tree is changing. It's being transformed. On the left side we see the darkness, the distortion, what the Bible text today calls the demonic. And this is our human condition in all its messiness and mystery. We experience it as this. Perhaps we use some of these words to describe wilderness, sort of like a winter of the soul, disease, death, oppression, feeling lifeless, being condemned. So what is Jesus doing here in this human mess? Well, it seems to me as I'm listening to the text that Jesus is acting to bring life into this deadliness and liberation from the distortion of our human experience. And we could use words like this to imagine how Jesus is acting to emerge this kind of liberation in our experience. Perhaps words like this: tree of life, in contrast to the wilderness. Healing, welcoming all. Connection, compassion, the feeling of aliveness. Jesus is acting to liberate life. That is what Jesus is doing here. And you know, Jesus isn't just curing the fever of Peter's mother-in-law. As wonderful as that would be, Jesus is liberating her life so that she can again be connected with community. Jesus is raising her up out of her inactivity and her frozenness so that she can act in life with loving service. And Jesus isn't just casting out a few demons from a few individuals in the village of Capernaum. No, instead, he is liberating the entire community. He's setting them free from all of the social and the religious and the economic oppressions which are weighing their lives down and destroying their lives. So what is Jesus doing here today? Well, isn't Jesus here to liberate us, to set us free? You know, like that mother-in-law in the text, free to serve others in love. Well, let me give you 2 examples of this that I experienced this past weekend at a worship event that I experienced with the Reverend Nadia Boltz-Weber. And here's a picture of her, and you might remember her from several video clips we have listened to, and also if you've read her book. She is the pastor of a church in Denver, Colorado. And after this beautiful worship service, a Lutheran worship service at that, she had to put us Baptists at ease and said, you'll make it through, don't worry, all will be well. After that, we had an open time of conversation with Nadia, and at one point in the gathering, a woman stood up and addressed Nadia. And this woman stood up and she was leaning against her walker, so she had some physical problem, but she confronted Nadia with a